Vincent spent 6 months hunting the person who stole $47 million from his criminal empire. He suspected his fiancée, then his lawyer, then his rivals. But when he finally discovered the truth in a warehouse confrontation, the betrayer was the one person he'd trusted completely. And she'd been working for his dead father all along. The envelope arrived at Vincent Calabrese's office at 3:47 a.m., delivered by a courier who didn't exist in any employee database. Inside was a single photograph. Vincent's fiancée, Elena, sitting across from Dmitry Volkov at a cafe in Prague. The timestamp read 4 hours earlier. What nobody noticed was the reflection in the cafe window, a third person, watching them both. Vincent didn't call Elena. He didn't confront Volkov. Instead, he did something that would unravel 15 years of carefully constructed power. He placed the photograph in his desk drawer and continued reading merger documents as if nothing had changed. That single moment of restraint, or perhaps denial, set in motion a sequence of events that would dismantle the most sophisticated criminal network on the Eastern Seaboard. If you're drawn to stories about power, mistakes, and the price of choice, this channel is built for you. Subscribe, because every story here is about what decisions really cost. Let me take you back 6 hours to when Vincent Calabrese was still the undisputed architect of what the FBI called the Syndicate, a term Vincent found pedestrian. He preferred to think of it as a logistics company that happened to operate in markets the government refused to acknowledge. The war room of the Calabrese organization occupied the entire 42nd floor of a building Vincent didn't technically own. Glass walls, minimalist furniture, and screens displaying real-time data from shipping ports, financial markets, and encrypted communication networks. It looked more like a hedge fund than a criminal enterprise. Because that's exactly what it was designed to resemble. Vincent stood at the window, watching the city wake up below him. At 38, he'd accomplished what his father had spent a lifetime attempting. He'd made the family legitimate in the eyes of the law while maintaining absolute control over the city's underground economy. Import-export companies, real estate holdings, venture capital firms, all clean on paper, all feeding the same beast underneath. "The Philadelphia shipment is flagged," his second-in-command, Marco, said from behind him. "Customs is asking questions." "Let 'em ask," Vincent replied without turning. "The manifests are perfect. They'll clear it by noon. And if they don't, then we lose $3 million in pharmaceuticals and activate the backup route through Baltimore. We've planned for this." This was Vincent's superpower. He planned for everything. Every contingency had a contingency waiting in the wings. Every risk had been calculated, mitigated, or accepted as the cost of doing business. Except one. Elena Petrov had entered his life 18 months earlier at a charity gala, the kind of event where criminals donated to children's hospitals to launder both money and reputation. She was a curator at the Metropolitan Museum, specializing in recovered antiquities. Beautiful, yes, but Vincent had been surrounded by beautiful women his entire life. What caught his attention was the way she looked at a painting. She studied it the way Vincent studied people, searching for the hidden structure beneath the surface. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours. Their engagement was announced 6 months later, and for the first time in Vincent's life, Vincent Calabrese had something in his world that wasn't part of a strategic plan. That should have been his first warning. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Running late. Meeting went long. Love you." He checked the timestamp on the photograph again. 4 hours earlier. Prague was 7 hours ahead, which meant... The door opened. Sophia Chen, his financial strategist and the most analytically ruthless person Vincent had ever met, entered with a tablet. "We have a problem," she said. "The Philadelphia shipment?" "No, bigger." She set the tablet on his desk. "Someone's been moving money through our Eastern European accounts, small amounts under the threshold that would trigger our alerts, but over the past 6 months, it totals $47 million. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold settled in his chest. Who authorized it? Nobody. The transactions are clean, routed through legitimate business expenses. Whoever did this knows our system inside and out. Show me the pattern. Sophia pulled up a map. Red dots appeared across Eastern Europe: Prague, Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade. Each dot represented a transaction, each one appearing random in isolation, but together they formed a network. A network identical to the one Vincent had been building for a potential expansion into European markets. "This is our expansion plan," Vincent said quietly. "Yes, someone copied our blueprint and is building it out ahead of us. By the time we move, they'll already own the infrastructure." "Who has access to this plan?" "You, me, Marco, and—" Sophia paused. "Say it." Elena consulted on the European art market connections. She helped identify which collectors could be leveraged for introductions. Vincent opened the drawer and placed the photograph on the desk. Sophia studied it for exactly 3 seconds. "When did you receive this?" 20 minutes ago. "And you're still here instead of on a plane to Prague because leaving immediately is what someone wants me to do. This photograph isn't evidence, it's bait." Sophia tilted her head slightly. A gesture Vincent had learned meant she was recalculating her assessment of the situation. "You think this is more than just Elena potentially betraying you?" "I think someone is very carefully trying to make me believe Elena is betraying me. The question is why? To make you emotional, to make you sloppy, or to make me remove her myself so they don't have to." Vincent stood and walked to the window again. Below, the city continued its morning routine, oblivious to the fact that one of its invisible pillars was beginning to crack.
Dmitry Volkov, Sophia said, pulling up a file. Former FSB, now runs a network out of Moscow that deals in information brokerage. Not drugs, not weapons, intelligence. He sells access, connections, secrets. Why would Elena be meeting with him? Maybe she's not the target. Maybe you are. If Volkov wanted to compromise your organization, the fastest way wouldn't be to attack it directly. It would be to turn someone close to you, or make you think someone close to you had turned. Vincent's phone buzzed again. "Elena, can we have dinner tonight? I need to talk to you about something." He showed the message to Sophia. "That could be innocent," she said, "or it could be her trying to get ahead of something she knows you're about to discover. There's a third option, which is someone fed her information that would make her want to talk to me tonight, someone who wants us both in the same room at the same time." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "You think this is a setup for both of you?" "I think someone has been playing a very long game, and we're just now seeing the endgame pieces move into position." Vincent returned to his desk and pulled up the financial data again. $47 million, moved over 6 months, not stolen, redirected, building a mirror image of his European expansion. "Sophia, who benefits if I go to war with Volkov?" "Anyone who wants to destabilize your organization while you're distracted. The Corelli family in Boston has been testing boundaries. The Albanians in Philadelphia want more territory. Even internally, there are people who think you've gone too soft since I got engaged." "I didn't say that, but others have." Sophia didn't deny it. Vincent had built his empire on the principle that emotion was a liability. His father had ruled through fear and loyalty, burning through allies and enemies alike until a heart attack took him at 53. Vincent had learned from that mistake. He'd built systems instead of relationships, created redundancies instead of dependencies. And then Elena had slipped past every defense he'd constructed. Love wasn't supposed to be part of the equation. But here it was, sitting in the middle of his carefully balanced world like a bomb with an unknown timer. "What do you want to do?" Sophia asked. Vincent looked at the photograph again. Elena, sitting across from Volkov, her expression unreadable in the grainy image. In the reflection of the cafe window, that third person, just a shadow really, impossible to identify. What nobody noticed was that Vincent had been trained since childhood to spot surveillance, and the angle of that photograph, the clarity of the reflection, the precise framing, this wasn't taken by an amateur. This was taken by someone who wanted him to see that third person, which meant the photograph wasn't evidence of Elena's betrayal, it was a message about someone else entirely. I want you to find out who took this picture, and I want to know why they wanted me to see it. And Elena? I'm having dinner with her tonight, and I'm going to ask her about Prague. Vincent, if she is compromised, then I'll know. But if she's not, and I treat her like she is, I'll have destroyed the one thing in my life that wasn't built on suspicion and calculation. Sophia gathered her tablet. That's not strategic thinking, that's hope. Maybe, or maybe whoever planned this doesn't understand that love can be a strategy too. After Sophia left, Vincent sat in silence, staring at the photograph. Somewhere in this city, someone was watching the pieces move, confident that Vincent Calabrese would react exactly as they'd predicted. But Vincent had survived 15 years in a business that killed most men in 5 by never doing what people expected. He picked up his phone and made a call, not to Elena, not to Marco or Sophia, to someone he hadn't spoken to in 7 years, someone who existed outside his organization, outside the system entirely. The phone rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. "I need a favor," Vincent said. "You don't call people in 7 years and then ask for favors. I know, but you're the only person I trust who has no reason to lie to me." A pause. "What do you need?" "I need to know if I'm about to lose everything because I made one good choice or if I'm being played into throwing it away." Another pause, longer this time. "Where and when?" Vincent gave her the address of a coffee shop far from any of his usual locations. Neutral grounds, anonymous. 2 hours, she said, and hung up. Vincent looked at the photograph one more time, then locked it in his safe. Whatever was coming, it had already started. The only question was whether he'd figure out the real game before the final move was made. Outside his window, the city continued to wake up, unaware that the invisible architecture holding it together was beginning to crack. And somewhere in Prague, or maybe closer than that, someone was smiling, because the trap had been set perfectly. All that remained was watching Vincent Calabrese choose between his empire and his heart, and destroy himself either way. The coffee shop was called Neutral Grounds, a name that would have been ironic if it weren't so accurate. It sat in a neighborhood that belonged to no family, claimed by no organization, a rare pocket of actual neutrality in a city carved up like a feudal territory. Vincent arrived 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and sat at a table with sightlines to both entrances. Old habits. Rachel Kim walked in precisely on time, which was one of the reasons Vincent trusted her. In their world, punctuality was respect, and respect was currency.
She looked the same. Sharp features, dark suit, gray streak in her black hair that she'd stopped dyeing 3 years ago. Rachel had been his father's accountant before becoming Vincent's auditor, then his conscience, and finally, the one person who'd walked away from his organization while still alive and on good terms. "You look terrible," she said, sitting down without ordering anything. "I'm about to find out if the woman I love has been stealing from me to fund a rival organization." "Then you look appropriately terrible." Rachel folded her hands on the table. "Show me." Vincent slid a USB drive across to her. "Everything you need is on here. Financial data, the photograph, timeline." Rachel pocketed the drive without looking at it. "What's your read?" "Vincent, someone wants me to believe Elena is the threat, which means she probably isn't. Unless that's what they want you to think." "I considered that." And I've spent 18 months with this woman. I've watched how she thinks, how she makes decisions. If she wanted to steal from me, she wouldn't build a mirror organization. She'd leverage my existing structure and bleed it slowly from the inside. This is too obvious. Rachel's expression didn't change. You're telling me your judgment isn't compromised? I'm telling you I need someone whose judgment isn't compromised to verify mine. Fair. Rachel glanced around the coffee shop, a casual movement that assessed every exit and potential threat. Talk me through the players. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed her a list. Dmitry Volkov, information broker, former intelligence. No direct conflict with my organization, but he's connected to people who would benefit from seeing me weakened. Who else? Internally, I have 3 people who've expressed concerns about my relationship with Elena. Marco thinks I'm distracted. Sophia thinks I'm vulnerable. Thomas, my legal counsel, thinks I'm making inheritance decisions based on emotion rather than strategy. Are you? Vincent paused. I updated my will 6 weeks ago. If something happens to me, Elena receives nothing from the criminal enterprise. She inherits the legitimate businesses, the art galleries, real estate, import companies, everything that's actually legal. That's either very smart or very stupid. It keeps her separated from anything that could put her in prison. If I die, she walks away clean. Unless she's already dirty. Vincent's jaw tightened. That's what I'm trying to find out. Rachel leaned back. You want my honest assessment? You're doing exactly what someone predicted you'd do. You're trying to solve this logically when the whole point of the play is to make you emotional. Whoever designed this understands that your strength is strategic thinking, so they created a situation where strategy and emotion are in direct conflict. So what do I do? You stop treating this like a business problem and start treating it like what it is, a personal attack designed to destroy you from the inside. Vincent's phone buzzed, a text from Elena. Where are you? I thought we were having dinner. He checked the time. He'd been so focused on meeting Rachel that he'd forgotten dinner was scheduled for 7, not 8. I need to go. No, Rachel's voice was sharp. You need to think. Where were you supposed to meet her? Our apartment. Who knows you were supposed to be there at 7? Vincent's mind raced through the previous 48 hours. He'd mentioned it to Sophia during a briefing. Marco had asked about his evening plans. Thomas had emailed confirming he'd be available for an emergency call if needed. Half my inner circle. And yet you are here instead, which means if someone was planning something for 7 at your apartment, you just avoided it. Vincent felt cold. Call her. Not yet. First, tell me, who suggested that coffee shop you thought you were meeting at tonight? Vincent pulled up his messages. The reservation confirmation had come from Elena's phone, but the actual suggestion... His blood froze. The suggestion had come in a forwarded message from Thomas, his lawyer, who'd mentioned a quiet new place that would be good for sensitive conversations. Someone's in my organization, Vincent said quietly. Or multiple someones. Rachel stood. Don't call her yet. If someone's listening, you'll tip them off. Do you have a way to reach her that's completely secure? Vincent thought for a moment, then pulled out a second phone, one he'd given Elena for emergencies, on a network completely separate from his business communications. He sent a single text, Red. It was a code they'd established early on, half joking. Red meant danger. Red meant drop everything and call from a secure location. 30 seconds later, the phone rang. Vincent? What's wrong? Her voice, clear, concerned, genuine. Or was that what betrayal sounded like when it was performed perfectly? Where are you right now? He asked. In a cab heading to the apartment. I just landed an hour ago. The Prague meeting ran longer than expected. Vincent, you're scaring me. Tell the cab to take you to the Plaza Hotel instead. Check in under the name we used in Montreal. Don't go to the apartment. What's happening? I'll explain when I see you. 1 hour. And, Elena, did you meet with Dmitry Volkov in Prague? A silence that lasted 3 heartbeats too long. "Yes," she said finally. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight." Vincent closed his eyes. "I'll see you in an hour." He hung up and looked at Rachel. She admitted it. Which could mean she's honest or smart enough to know you already knew. Helpful. I'm not here to be helpful. I'm here to keep you alive. Rachel checked her watch. You have an hour before you talk to her. Use it wisely. What else don't you know? Vincent pulled up the financial data again, spreading it across the table. 47 million moved over 6 months. The pattern matches my European expansion plan exactly. But here's what doesn't make sense, the timeline. Explain. Elena and I got engaged 6 months ago. These transactions started the week after we
announced it. If she'd been planning to steal from me, she would have started before the engagement, not after. Starting after means someone else used your engagement as a trigger event, Rachel finished. Someone who saw your relationship as an opportunity. Vincent nodded slowly. And if they were going to frame Elena, they'd need her to actually meet with people like Volkov. They'd need to create a real paper trail of suspicious behavior. So they fed her a reason to do exactly what would look incriminating. The question is, what was the reason? Rachel stood. That's what you need to find out in the next hour. But Vincent, be prepared for the possibility that even if she didn't betray you intentionally, she might have been used, and people don't like being told they've been manipulated. After Rachel left, Vincent sat alone in the coffee shop, staring at the financial data. Somewhere in these numbers was a pattern he was missing. Someone had spent 6 months building a perfect frame, using Elena as the centerpiece. But frames required framers, and framers made mistakes. He started going through the transactions again, this time not looking at where the money went, but where it came from. Every transaction had an origin point, a shell company, a subsidiary, a front organization. He traced each one back through the corporate structure. And there it was. 17 of the 47 million had originated from accounts that required dual authorization, his signature and one other. Thomas Brennan, his lawyer. Vincent's hands went cold. Thomas had been with the organization for 12 years, had helped Vincent navigate the transition from his father's brutal methods to his more sophisticated approach, had drafted every major contract, every legitimate business structure, every inheritance document, including the new will Vincent had signed 6 weeks ago. The will that left Elena the legitimate businesses and nothing from the criminal enterprise. Which meant if Vincent died after marrying Elena, Thomas, as executor, would have control over the entire criminal organization during the transition period. Not permanently, but long enough. Long enough to strip assets, long enough to redirect infrastructure, long enough to sell the network to the highest bidder and disappear before anyone realized what had happened. Vincent pulled up Thomas's travel records. Prague, Vienna, Budapest. Every city where the money had been moved, Thomas had been there, always on business, related to legitimate corporate structures. The photograph hadn't been about Elena at all. It had been about getting Vincent to remove the one person who might actually stop Thomas's plan, because if Vincent discovered Elena's betrayal, he'd change his will again, removing her entirely, leaving Thomas in complete control. Vincent checked his watch. 45 minutes until he met Elena. He made a call. "Sophia, I need you to freeze all accounts that require dual authorization with Thomas Brennan." "What? Why?" "Because I think he's been stealing from us for 6 months, and in approximately 2 hours, he's going to realize I know." "Vincent, Thomas is..." "Either the smartest thief I've ever seen, or I'm about to destroy an innocent man's life, which is why I need you to freeze the accounts, but not arrest him, not yet." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to give him exactly what he wants and see if he takes it." Vincent hung up and sent a text to Thomas. "Need to meet, tonight, 10 p.m., the office, regarding my will." The response came back in seconds. "I'll be there."
Too fast, too eager. Vincent pocketed his phone and headed for the Plaza Hotel. If this was going to work, he needed Elena to trust him completely, which meant he had to tell her the truth, all of it, and hope that the last 18 months had meant what he thought they had, because in 36 hours, either he'd dismantled a plot to destroy his empire, or he'd handed Thomas Brennan the keys to everything Vincent had spent 15 years building. And the only person who could help him figure out which was the woman he loved, who may or may not have been an unwitting pawn in someone else's game. What nobody noticed was that Vincent Calabrese, for the first time in his carefully controlled life, was about to do something he'd never done before. He was about to trust completely. Elena was waiting in the hotel suite when Vincent arrived. She'd changed from travel clothes into jeans and a sweater, deliberate casualness that signaled she knew this wasn't a romantic evening. "Talk," she said. No preamble, no fear, just directness. That's when Vincent knew. Whatever else was happening, Elena wasn't performing. He sat across from her and put the photograph on the coffee table. She picked it up, studied it for perhaps 5 seconds, then set it down. "Who sent this to you?" "I don't know yet. But you think it's connected to why you told me not to go home?" "Yes." Elena stood and walked to the window. "The meeting with Volkov was about art authentication, or at least that's what I thought it was about." "Explain." 3 months ago, I was contacted about a collection of paintings supposedly recovered from a German vault, World War II era, presumed destroyed. The collector wanted them authenticated before sale. It's exactly the kind of work I do. What does Volkov have to do with it? He was the intermediary. The actual collector didn't want to be identified, which is unusual in this market. Volkov vouched for the pieces, arranged meetings, handled logistics. Vincent felt pieces clicking into place. How much were the paintings worth? 47 million if they were authentic. They weren't authentic, Vincent said. How did you know that? Because someone needed you traveling to exactly those cities at exactly those times to create a pattern. The paintings were never the point. You were.
He watched her process this, watched the moment she understood she'd been used. Someone wanted you to think I was stealing from you. Yes. Using my legitimate work as cover. Yes. And you, she paused, you came here instead of assuming I was guilty. I came here because the frame was too obvious, and because in 18 months you've never lied to me about anything, not once, even when the truth was uncomfortable. Elena sat back down. What do you need from me? I need to know everything about the Volkov meetings, every detail, because somewhere in those details is evidence of who set this up. For the next 30 minutes, Elena walked Vincent through the timeline. The initial contact had come through a gallery she'd worked with before. The authentication work had been straightforward, if unusually demanding. Volkov had been professional, knowledgeable, and connected to people in the European art world she'd verified independently. Wait, Vincent interrupted. Who referred you for this job? Thomas, your lawyer. He said a client of his was looking for someone with my specific expertise. Vincent felt his chest tighten. Thomas referred you. Yes, he said it would be good for my career, good for establishing independence from your world. I thought he was being thoughtful. He was being strategic. Vincent stood and paced the room. The architecture of the trap was becoming clear. Thomas had created a legitimate reason for Elena to travel to the exact cities where money was being moved, had used her professional reputation to establish credibility, had made sure every action she took looked suspicious in hindsight while being completely explainable in context. What happens now? Elena asked. Now I need you to do something dangerous. Which is? I need you to call Volkov and tell him you've reconsidered. Tell him you think some of the paintings might be authentic after all. Tell him you want another look. Elena's eyes narrowed. You want to draw out whoever's behind this. I want Thomas to think his plan is still working. If he believes you're still pursuing the Volkov connection, he'll feel safe enough to make his next move. And that move is... Vincent's phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Accounts frozen. Thomas just attempted a large wire transfer. It was blocked. His next move just happened, Vincent said, showing Elena the message. He knows I'm onto something. So your trap just sprung early. Or he's about to run. Vincent made a call. Marco, I need eyes on Thomas Brennan, now. Don't approach, just track. Vincent hung up and turned back to Elena. I have a meeting with him at 10 tonight. He'll either show up ready to talk, or he'll disappear. There's a third option. He might try to eliminate the problem entirely. Elena stood. You think he'd try to kill you? I think if someone spent 6 months planning to steal my organization, they've also planned for the contingency where I discover them. Then don't go to the meeting. Vincent smiled without humor. If I don't show up, he'll know I'm scared, and scared people make predictable decisions. I need him to think I'm still trying to figure this out, that I'm not certain yet. Are you certain? I thought about that. 90%, which means there's a 10% chance I'm about to destroy an innocent man's life because I'm paranoid. Or a 90% chance you're about to catch someone who's been stealing from you for half a year. Those are the odds I'm working with. Elena moved closer. What can I do? Call Volkov, make it convincing, and then get somewhere safe until this is over. Define safe. Anywhere I'm not, because if Thomas is desperate enough, he might try to use you as leverage. That's romantic. That's realistic. Elena pulled out her phone. I'll call Volkov, but I'm not hiding. If you're walking into a potential trap, someone needs to be watching your back. Elena, you trusted me when you had no reason to. Now I'm trusting my instinct that you need help whether you admit it or not. So make whatever preparations you need to make, and I'll make mine. Vincent wanted to argue, but the look on her face stopped him. This wasn't naivete or bravado. This was someone who understood the stakes and was choosing to stay anyway. That decision would either save his life or doom them both. His phone rang. Marco. We have a problem. Thomas isn't at his office or his apartment. His car is still in the garage, but security footage shows him leaving the building on foot 3 hours ago. Where would he go? That depends on whether he's running or planning something. Vincent checked the time. 8:47 p.m., just over an hour until the scheduled meeting. Pull up the security feeds from the office building. I want to know if anyone's been there in the last 4 hours. A pause, then Marco's voice tighter. Vincent, someone accessed your office 40 minutes ago. They used an executive key card. Show me. A moment later, Vincent's phone showed a figure in a dark coat entering his office. The angle was wrong to see the face clearly, but the height and build could be Thomas. What's he doing? Elena asked, looking over his shoulder. I don't know, but whatever it is... Vincent's blood went cold. Marco, has anyone swept my office for devices today? No, why would... He stopped. You think he planted something? I think if I walk into that meeting, I might not walk out. Vincent stood and began gathering his things. Change of plans. We're not going to the office. Then where? Somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses and security cameras. He made another call. Rachel, I need that favor after all. An hour later, Vincent sat in a private room at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. The room was normally used for corporate negotiations, soundproof walls, security that scanned for weapons and recording devices, and, most importantly, independent security footage that couldn't be tampered with.
Thomas Brennan walked in at exactly 10 p.m. He looked calm, professional, completely at ease. Vincent, I got your message about the will. Thomas set his briefcase on the table. What changes are we making? I want to remove Elena entirely. Thomas's expression flickered just for a second before resetting to professional neutrality. May I ask why? I've received some concerning information about her activities in Europe. I need to protect the organization. I see. Thomas opened his briefcase, pulled out documents. I can draft the amendments tonight. But Vincent, are you certain about this? Removing a fiancée from a will entirely can create legal complications during a divorce. Who said anything about divorce? Thomas looked up. I assumed. You assumed I'd discovered Elena was stealing from me. You assumed I'd react emotionally, remove her from everything, and leave you in complete control during the transition. The color drained from Thomas's face. You assumed, Vincent continued, voice deadly calm, that I wouldn't notice $47 million being moved through accounts you had access to, that I wouldn't trace the pattern, that I wouldn't figure out you'd used my fiancé's legitimate work to create a cover story for your theft. Thomas stood slowly. Vincent, I can explain. The office was bugged. My apartment probably is too. You were going to record me confronting Elena, use it as evidence of my instability, and leverage it to take control. Am I close? Thomas's hand moved toward his briefcase. Don't. Vincent's voice was ice. Security is watching. You pull anything out of that case that isn't paper, and this becomes a hostage situation. Thomas's hand stopped. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent said. You are going to sit down. You are going to tell me who you're working with, and you're going to transfer every stolen dollar back into the accounts you took it from. Do that, and you get to leave the city alive. And if I don't, then I'll let Sophia and Marco handle this, and Thomas, they're much less forgiving than I am. For a long moment, Thomas said nothing. Then he sat down. You're right about everything except one thing, Thomas said quietly. I'm not working with anyone. I've been working against someone. Vincent felt the ground shift. Explain. 6 months ago, I was approached by someone from the Corelli family in Boston. They had evidence of transactions I'd made, technically legal, morally questionable. They said they'd expose me unless I helped them take over your organization from the inside. So you started stealing. I started creating exactly what they wanted to see, a money trail that looked like theft, but was actually a honeypot. Every dollar I moved, I documented. Every transaction, I traced back to its source. I've been building a case against the Corelli family for 6 months. Thomas pulled out his phone, showed Vincent a file. Everything is here. Names, dates, amounts. Enough to destroy their entire operation. Vincent studied the file. It was comprehensive, detailed, exactly what it would take to bring down one of the most powerful families on the East Coast. It was also exactly what someone would create if they wanted to seem innocent while actually being guilty. If this is true, Vincent said slowly, why not come to me 6 months ago? Because I didn't know if you were compromised. The Corellis knew too much about your organization, details only someone in your inner circle could provide. I had to assume there was a mole, so I built my case quietly, waiting for the right moment to bring it to you. And Elena? Was a mistake. I thought giving her legitimate work in Europe would keep her safe, away from the organization while I dealt with the threat. I didn't realize the Corellis would use it to frame her as part of their play against you. Vincent leaned back. Every instinct he had was screaming that this was another layer of lies, but the details were too perfect, the documentation too complete. There's one way to verify this, Vincent said, slowly. You claim the Corellis are behind this. Fine. We'll set up a meeting. You, me, and them. If your story is true, you'll have no problem confronting them with this evidence. Thomas went pale. Vincent, if we do that, then we'll know. Either you're telling the truth and we end the Corelli threat permanently, or you're lying and this is your last chance to run. A long silence. Okay, Thomas said finally. Set up the meeting. Vincent made a call. Marco, I need you to reach out to the Corellis. Tell them I want to discuss a territorial arrangement. Tomorrow night. neutral location. After Thomas left, Elena emerged from the connected room where she'd been listening. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "I don't know," Vincent admitted, "but in 12 hours we'll have our answer." What he didn't say was that he'd just set in motion a confrontation that would either save his empire or trigger a war that would destroy everything. And somewhere in the city, someone was adjusting their plans, realizing that Vincent Calabrese was more dangerous than they had calculated. The meeting was set for a warehouse in Red Hook, neutral territory by virtue of being claimed by no one important. Vincent arrived an hour early with Marco and Sophia. Elena had insisted on coming despite his protests. She was waiting in a car 2 blocks away with Rachel, armed with the documentation Thomas had provided. "This is a terrible idea," Sophia said, checking the exits for the 3rd time. "It's the only idea that forces everyone to show their cards," Vincent replied. At exactly 9 p.m., Thomas arrived, alone as agreed. At 9:15, 2 black SUVs pulled up. 4 men emerged, followed by Antonio Corelli, patriarch of the Boston family, 73 years old and sharp as a knife. "Vincent," Corelli said, extending a hand. "Antonio, thank you for coming." They shook hands, the ritual of men who respected the game, even if they didn't trust each other.
"You said you wanted to discuss territories," Corelli said, settling into a chair. "I assume this is about the Philadelphia situation." "No," Vincent said. "It's about the $47 million someone has been moving through Eastern European accounts for the past 6 months. Corelli's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're talking about." "Then let me clarify." Vincent nodded to Thomas, who pulled out his documentation. "For the past 6 months, someone has been building a mirror network of my European expansion plans. The money trail leads back to accounts connected to your organization." Corelli looked at the documents, then at Thomas. "Mr. Brennan, I was under the impression you were working for me." The room went silent. Thomas's face drained of color. "What?" "The arrangement we made," Corelli continued calmly. "You provide information about Vincent's organization. We pay you. We move money through accounts you set up. It was all quite straightforward." "That's not—" Thomas looked at Vincent. "He's lying. I told you I was building a case against him." "Were you?" Corelli smiled. "Or were you stealing from Vincent while making it look like I was responsible? Because from where I sit, all this evidence you've compiled proves that someone was moving money, but it doesn't prove who authorized it." Vincent felt the architecture of the trap shift again. This was the real play. Thomas and Corelli weren't enemies, they were partners, and this entire meeting was designed to make Vincent choose who to believe. Except neither of them had counted on one variable. Elena walked into the warehouse. "Elena, what are you—" Vincent started. "I called Dmitry Volkov, told him I wanted another meeting about the paintings. He said something interesting." She pulled out her phone, played a recording. Volkov's voice, heavily accented. "Miss Petrov, I appreciate your renewed interest, but I must be honest. There never were any paintings. The entire project was commissioned by someone who wanted to create a pattern of your movements. I was paid quite well for the performance." "Who paid you?" Elena's voice on the recording. "I was never told a name, but the money came through an account in the Cayman Islands, and the instructions were very specific. Make sure every meeting was photographed. Make sure there was documentation. Make sure Vincent Calabrese would see it all eventually." The recording ended. Corelli's smile faded. "That's impossible. I never—" "You never dealt with Volkov directly," Vincent finished, "because you weren't running this operation. Someone was running both of you." He turned to Thomas. "You told me the Corellis approached you. Antonio, when did Thomas approach you?" Corelli's silence was answer enough. Thomas stood slowly. "This is ridiculous. I'm being framed." "Sit down," Marco said, hand inside his jacket. Thomas sat. Vincent pulled out his own phone and displayed a financial document. "This is a wire transfer authorization from 3 hours ago, from an account in the Cayman Islands, the same account that paid Volkov, to an account in Switzerland registered to a shell company. He showed the screen to everyone in the room. That shell company is owned by someone in this warehouse, someone who's been playing all of us against each other for 6 months. Sophia, Vincent said quietly, show them. Sophia opened her laptop and turned it around. On the screen was a corporate structure diagram, a web of companies, accounts, and holdings. At the center was a name, Sophia Chen. For exactly 3 seconds, no one moved. Then Sophia smiled. You actually figured it out. I'm impressed. Vincent felt his world tilt. How long? Since the beginning, since before you even hired me. Your father and I had an arrangement. I helped him hide money from you, from the government, from everyone. When he died, I inherited that network. Not legally, but practically. Your father was a realist. He knew you'd reform the organization, make it softer, more legitimate. He wanted insurance, someone who could preserve the real empire if you failed. That someone was me. The European expansion, Vincent said, pieces falling into place. You weren't building a mirror network. You were building an exit strategy. Very good. The 47 million wasn't theft. It was relocation of assets your father set aside before he died, assets you didn't know existed. I was simply moving them to accounts you couldn't access. By framing Elena, by creating a scenario where you'd either destroy your relationship and stay focused on the organization, or choose her and weaken yourself enough for me to take control. Either way, I won. Vincent looked at Thomas, then Corelli. You used both of them. I gave Thomas real evidence of Corelli involvement. I gave Corelli real evidence of Thomas's theft. I made each of them believe the other was the threat, and I made you believe Elena was the problem, knowing you'd eventually figure out she wasn't and start looking elsewhere. But you didn't expect me to look at you. Sophia's smile widened. Actually, I counted on it, because now you're faced with an impossible choice. You can expose me, which means admitting to the FBI and every rival organization that your chief financial strategist has been stealing from you for years. Your empire collapses from the loss of confidence. She paused. Or you can let me walk away with the 47 million and the European network. You keep your organization, your reputation, and Elena. I disappear. Everyone wins. Vincent stood very still. There's a third option, which is, I kill you right now. Sophia laughed. No, you won't, because I have a dead man's switch. Every document, every transaction, every compromising detail about your organization is set to automatically transmit to the FBI if I don't check in every 12 hours. Kill me, and you destroy yourself. The warehouse went silent except for the distant sound of traffic. Vincent turned to Corelli. How much did she pay you to come here tonight?
Corelli's eyes narrowed. 2 million. To verify her story about Thomas? And Thomas, how much did she pay you to bring that documentation? Thomas looked sick. 500,000. She said it was protection money in case the Corellis turned on me. Vincent walked to the window, looked out at the dark water of the harbor. Behind him, he could feel everyone waiting. Elena spoke first. She's right about one thing. If you expose her, the organization collapses. If you kill her, you go to prison. But if you let her walk, I lose everything my father built, Vincent finished. The real empire, the one I didn't even know existed. Did you want that empire? Elena asked quietly. Vincent turned to look at her. What? Your father's empire, the one built on paranoia and hidden assets and contingency plans within contingency plans. Did you want to run that organization, or did you want to build something different? For the first time in 6 months, Vincent saw the situation clearly. Sophia, you said I have 2 choices, but you're wrong. I have a 4th option, which is, I let you have the 47 million. I let you have the European network. I let you have everything my father set aside. Sophia's expression flickered with uncertainty. And in exchange? In exchange, you disappear completely. No contact, no interference, no dead man switches. You get to live, get to spend your money, and get to run your network, but you do it far away from me and mine. That's it? You just letting me walk away? I'm choosing which empire I want, and it's not my father's. Vincent turned to Corelli. Antonio, I assume you'd like your 2 million back. Very much so. Sophia will wire it to you before she leaves. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. Vincent looked at Thomas. And you are going to resign quietly, move to a different city, and never use your legal expertise for anyone in this world again. Do that, and you get to keep breathing. Thomas nodded mutely. Vincent walked back to Sophia. You were right about one thing. My relationship with Elena made me vulnerable. It created an opening you could exploit. But you were wrong about what that vulnerability would cost me. He took Elena's hand. I spent 15 years building an empire my father would have respected. Efficient, sophisticated, nearly invisible. And in the process, I became exactly like him, paranoid, isolated, trusting no one. Then Elena appeared, and for the first time I had to choose between maintaining perfect control and actually living. You assumed I'd choose control, but that was your mistake. Sophia stared at him. You're walking away from $47 million? I'm walking away from a version of myself that would have eventually destroyed me. The money was never mine anyway. It was my father's insurance policy against me becoming someone he couldn't control, so you're welcome to it. Vincent turned to Marco. Let her go. Vincent, let her go. Sophia gathered her things slowly, as if this would be a trap. When no one stopped her, she walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. You're either the smartest man I've ever met or the biggest fool. Maybe both, but I'll sleep tonight. Will you? Sophia left without answering. The warehouse emptied slowly. Corelli and his men departed after receiving their wire transfer. Thomas slipped out like a ghost. Marco and Rachel exchanged a look that said Vincent had lost his mind, but would stand by him anyway. Finally, only Vincent and Elena remained. What happens now? She asked. Now we rebuild. Smaller, cleaner, the legitimate businesses, the legal operations. We let the criminal empire die with my father. You're walking away from that world entirely? I'm choosing a different path, one where I don't have to wonder if the woman I love is stealing from me, where I don't have to suspect my lawyer of betrayal, where I can actually build something instead of just protecting what I inherited. Elena stepped closer. That's going to cost you power, influence, money. I know. Are you sure? Vincent thought about it. The empire he was abandoning, the respect he'd lose from his father's generation, the years of work being dismantled by a single choice. He finally said, I've spent my entire life making strategic decisions, calculating every variable, predicting every outcome. And where did that get me? Standing in a warehouse at midnight, surrounded by people who'd sell me out for the right price. He pulled Elena close. For once, I'm making an emotional decision, and I'm trusting that love can be a strategy too. That's the worst business plan I've ever heard. Probably. They left the warehouse together, walking past the empty shipping containers and dark water. Behind them, the city hummed with its usual chaos, deals being made, territories being negotiated, empires rising and falling in the shadows. Vincent Calabrese was no longer part of that world. He'd chosen love over control, and in doing so, he'd lost his underworld throne. But as he walked hand in hand with Elena into the cold night air, breathing freely for the first time in years, he realized something his father never understood. Some thrones aren't worth keeping. 3 months later, Vincent sat in a different office, smaller, brighter, overlooking a park instead of a port. His new company focused on art acquisition and legitimate import-export. Elena worked 2 floors down in her own gallery space. The criminal organization had been divided among Marco and 2 other lieutenants who'd remained loyal. Vincent consulted occasionally, but kept his distance. The old empire was fracturing, just as he'd known it would without his strategic oversight. He'd lost influence, lost power, lost the respect of his father's generation. But he'd gained something else. The ability to sleep at night, to build something real with Elena, to make decisions based on what was right rather than what was strategic. Sophia Chen had disappeared into Eastern Europe, running the network she'd stolen with ruthless efficiency. Occasionally, Vincent would hear reports of her expanding, consolidating, becoming everything his father had wanted him to be. He felt no regret, because standing at his window, watching Elena cross the park below with a genuine smile on her face, Vincent Calabrese finally understood the difference between power and freedom. He'd chosen freedom, and someday, when he was old and looking back at this moment, he knew he'd recognize it as the decision that saved his life. Not from physical death, but from becoming a man so consumed by maintaining control that he forgot what it felt like to actually live. The throne was gone, the empire had fallen, but Vincent Calabrese had finally won the only game that mattered.